Corsair just released a new version of their ICUE Elite Capellix and LCD AiOs. But how much better is this than the older AiOs? How much better is it than some of the newer AiOs that have just recently released from like Deepcool, etc.? Last most important question is how much better is it than just blowing on your CPU? Like the big bad wolf. Okay, so AiOs are the new norm. We all know that. You name it, 7000 series or even the 13th or even some 12th gen require these little bad boys. And because of that, we've started to see refreshes from a lot of companies. CES was absolutely full of these. So we do have a number of new coolers that Corsair released just this last week, both using the same cooling tech, but one with the LCD screen, the ICUE Elite LCD XT, and then one without the screen right here, the H100 Elite Capellix XT. Again, both of these models are now available and you can pick them up from Corsair, and we have links to all of the stuff down below. Now price, here's the thing, price is definitely on the upper end when we're talking about these bad boys. Okay, so here's the deal. When you want to get a 240 millimeter AiO, it's $259. For a 360 millimeter, it's $289.99. And then for a 420 millimeter, it's $309.99. That's pricey. Now, let's say for instance, you don't want to get the LCD, you just want to get the standard Capellix XT, then it's a little bit better, $179.99 for a 240. You do have a 280 millimeter option in the Capellix XT version, which they do not make a 280 millimeter version in the LCD. So if you do want to get the LCD for this, a 280 millimeter AiO, it's going to cost you an extra $99. Now, this is $199 for a 280 millimeter, meaning that if you did that, that'd be $300, which you could then buy almost a 420 for. So I don't know if that works out from a math standpoint. Now, if you want to get the 360 millimeter version, you basically paying $219.99, and then you get a 420 millimeter version for $239.99. So the non-LCD versions are a little bit less pricey, but still kind of expensive compared to some other ones, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, what the big deal is that they're using these brand new fans from Corsair, and these are the AF RGB Elite fans. They are replacing in the arsenal the older ML120 Elite RGB fans, which those were the best performing fans Corsair had ever released. So when I heard that they were basically end of life, I was really surprised because honestly, the Elite Capellix AiOs, because of those fans, were very, very good AiOs. So the question was, given all this, how good or how much better are these going to be? Now, to be honest, outside of the fans, there isn't a whole lot different between this and the older Capellix AiOs. It's still the same amount of cables, which kind of sucks. It still has to use that giant commander core, which, come on guys, let's be honest. Maybe it could be used as a potential anti-burglar device where you could like beat down somebody breaking into your house, but outside of that, it's just a big chunky thing that's sitting in the back of your PC. So installation is similar to anything that you've seen. You can just check out, like for instance, our Corsair 5000D review or any of our live streams like this, where you've installed this, you can see how hard this is because you still have all those cables to manage. The one thing I really wish that you could have fixed that would have been really nice is you still cannot rotate the LCD screen. That's one of the biggest annoyances between the Z73 and most of the other ones is that you can rotate the screen in software, but in the Corsair one, even with the newer release, you still cannot rotate the screen, meaning you have to install it only one way or the screen will just be stuck in that position. So in fact, like I said, the biggest difference comes between the AF 120s and the ML 120s. So let's take a look at the differences between those fans. For 120 millimeters, when you talk about the AF 120, you get 2100 RPM for the AF 120, and that's 100 RPM faster than the ML 120 Elite. So, there's a positive. Sound level though, it's actually a slightly louder fan. I know here you can't hear it, but that's just because I'm being loud and obnoxious. 34.1 decibels at max speed versus 30.4 on the ML120 Elite. For airflow, we're actually seeing a pretty big jump here between the ML120 Elite and the AF120. The ML120 Elite had a 58.10 CFM, and the new AF120 RGB is jumping up to 65.57 CFM. So that's quite a bit more airflow. The interesting one was actually the drop in static pressure. So the static pressure, which is the part that basically makes a fan blow air through a radiator, which is how we measure this is through mmH2O, is actually actually lower on the AF120s than it is on the ML120 Elites, meaning that it could potentially be a worse fan for cooling your radiator. So in the case of the ML120 Elites, they were pushing 2.90 mm H2O versus the AF120s, which are pushing 2.68 millimeter H2O. There is a difference there, and we're going to talk about performance in terms of a little bit later on, but something to note and to be aware of. Now, by the way, for the 140 millimeter fans, because remember, you can get a 280 millimeter version in the Elite Capellics, they're the exact same. It's basically a bit louder, more airflow, and less static pressure. And the other thing that's worth noting is that you can buy these fans separately as a 3-pack or a single pack. And again, we have links down below. For those of you who are so excited about lighting, no compromise here. Still 8 RGB lights that can all be controlled via Capellics to your heart's desire. I mean, you can make that thing dance to like Dua Lipa. Though it is a lot of resources, let's not downplay that. ICUE takes a ton of resources. You could just set up hardware lighting if you just bought the fans separately, but unfortunately that's not an option if you get the Elite Capellics or the AiOs, because the fan curves, etc., are all controlled, and so you basically need to have ICUE running for the fans to do what they need to do, which is kind of sad. Speaking of ICUE, let's go through that stuff real quick. If you do have one of the older models, it works the exact same, but I just want to cover here in ICUE and just show you a little bit about what ICUE can do. So we are in, this is, if you've never seen this before, this is the ICUE controllers, and this is what you would see if you were to install this. And the reason that I was talking about like why you couldn't do hardware lighting, etc., and that's because of this right here. This is the cooling. So this is where I go to actually manage my temps and everything. You can see I can see all of my fan speeds. Here's my coolant temp, and then you can change your actual, you can actually change your fan curve. So very, very straightforward. So if I was going to go and hit this up at extreme, and I was going to set all these things to extreme, you can actually see now my fan speeds are jumping up, and they're also jumping up over here. So yeah, we got a nice faster speed. Still not loud, but I mean, you're getting that much faster speed, and you're seeing your coolant temp drop at the same time. Now, the real fun stuff that kind of comes from this though is in your lighting effects. Okay, so here we are, we're in our 8 LED series fans, which is our AF fans. You can see I can change my lighting. You have all these different options here, and then from here you have a ton of different lighting effects that we can go. So when we change watercolor, again, our lights went to watercolor. You can do things like color warp. There's a bunch of different things that you can actually do to make your stuff look good. And then you can play with this and layer this. It's crazy the stuff that you can do within ICUE to basically make your RGB look super awesome. You also have your ring. So this is a light ring that you can also change. And this is the lighting around the actual screen itself. So here we go, and you can actually see now that I've changed it, so now it's more like a watercolor spectrum, and then you can do stuff like rain, and now you're seeing that change here. So there's a lot that you can even change to go around. Then there's a super fun stuff, which is actually the LCD screen itself. So you can see here it's set at default, but you can also do things like uploaded image. And so here's a couple images you're seeing show up on the screen, or you can just go back to your default where it does things like your liquid temps and all sorts of stuff like that. And there's a bunch of things that you can modify to basically show. So a lot of fun to basically be had from that. But the last thing we love to show is when you look at ICUE and you look at the performance, here's the process, you're seeing 2 to 4%. I mean, sometimes this will jump up, but this is not a small amount of resources that you're basically losing when you're running this. So again, if you're buying a budget build, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna spend $1,000 and then I'm gonna spend $5,000 on Corsair stuff, just something to be aware of, that you are gonna see some pretty heavy tax and hit when you're using ICUE. Because if I, you know, again, if I just go in there, right, and hit quit, that goes away, and like, look, my overall CPU usage is dropping almost to nothing at that point in time. So something to absolutely be aware of. You can change your lighting and stuff to be something that's hardware controlled only, but if you want to manage that cooling, etc., that is only something you're going to be able to do when ICUE is running. Anyway, that's the demonstration and a different camera, and like, I'm sure we're gonna have other things that are happening. I don't know, maybe not, but let's go and let's go back and just finish our review. Okay, so remember guys, when we looked at ICUE, it does a lot, but it does come with a tax. So just definitely something to keep in mind as we talk a little bit more about this review. It is one of the best software suites in the market, hands down. And I know some people will argue this, but it really honestly is, as somebody who builds as many PCs as he does, but that doesn't mean it's lean at all. In fact, even when you watch the video where me versus Linus, which you can watch right here, Linus turned it off because he saw how much it did. Okay, so enough about like ICUE and everything else. How does this AIO stack up against other AIOs in the market, and how does this AIO stack up against itself? you know, given the older one and the fact that we actually see that drop in static pressure. So we tested the H150i Elite LCD XT and stacked it up against the LT720 from Deepcool, the LS720 from Deepcool, the H150i Elite Capellix, and then of course they're also their new H150i Elite as well. So we checked it against Corsair stuff as well as Deepcool. So for testing, this is what we use for basically when we test any AIO. We use a Lee & Lee LandCool 3, so it's a great airflow case with a Core i7 13700K, which can put out some heat, and we pair that with a 3090 Ti, which is a big, thick boy card, and we use all the same fans inside of the case, and they're all NFA fans. So in other words, NFA 12s for 120 millimeters and NFA 14. So pretty much the ideal setup for any AIO. Our ambient temp was controlled at 26 degrees Celsius. So let's take a look at idle temps. So looking here, it's about the same with a slight favor to the LS720, but all of them within 1 or 2 degrees. So margin of error. Well, what about when we put like the 13700K under load using Cinebench for like half an hour? Well, you can see here there are slight variations, with the higher static pressure actually favoring the older H150i Elite, and given the temperature down to a little bit less by 1 degree, which again is margin of error, but you can see that there is a difference. So essentially, none of these coolers are really standing out when you look at just temps until we do this. This is the part that's really interesting. This is what you're looking at for Cinebench scores using different coolers. And the thing that's really important here is the Cinebench score is showing basically what the overall score was for the different Cinebenches at the end of a 30-minute run. So obviously, the higher the score, the better the performance the CPU was able to push itself during the course of 30 minutes, versus the lower score means that it actually had to do some reductions either in boost speed or boost clocks. It wasn't thermal throttling, but it was boost throttling, so you weren't getting quite the highest score. And you are seeing a 1 to 200 difference between any of the Corsair stuff and the Deepcool stuff, which is telling for gaming and anything else. This means almost nothing, but for people who are looking for high performance compute, this is actually something you want to be aware of. What is a conclusion then, Robey? What are you saying? So these coolers, in the end, when you think about gaming, and for most of us, these are as good as some of the best coolers on the market, but all of that is for a significant jump in price, which you have to decide for yourself whether it's worth it. See, here's the deal. Both the LS720 and the LT720 offer a similar amount of performance and even aesthetic to the Corsair, and are simpler in terms of their overall implementation, in terms of even how you manage it, as well as their installation. However, and this is a big however, when you do factor in ICUE, and ICUE has so much stuff, things you could do with lighting, individual controls, monitoring, there is a whole lot more there. But unfortunately, it's at a heavy cost in terms of system resources. What it really comes down to is what you want out of your PC. I mean, are you looking for something like a water-cooled 5000D system I built using like Corsair with synchronized lighting and masterful effects and reactions to games and lighting? Then maybe this is an option for you. Because here's the deal. Once you get into the Corsair ecosystem, this is a single place to control everything for not only cooling, but also keyboards, mice, light poles, nano leaves, and a whole lot more. And if you're gonna go that route, then this might be the option for you. But if you're just wanting to cool, then maybe the cheaper options at a lower price point are a better option. But in the end, guys, it's about what you think. So what do you think? Are you a Corsair fan? Are you a big part of the Corsair ecosystem? Were you surprised by the results? Were you expecting something different? Were you expecting huge variations in terms of how AIO is cool? Is there something that we missed? I'd love to know all that and more down in the comments below. Now here's the deal. While you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button, whip that like button, and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we post a new video right here on Robeytech. Also, you know we have a live stream channel where sometimes we'll just live benchmark this stuff. You should head over to Robeytech Live, where we're building builds every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, starting at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then if YouTube's not your thing, you can join us over on Twitch as well. The other thing you should do is join our Discord server, discord.gg/Robeytech. We have our tech and PC enthusiasts that love to talk about all these things. And all of this data that I give you guys, everything is all available there for you to check out. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, you can check us out at Robeytech absolutely everywhere on the internet. We're on TikTok, Instagram. We used to be on Tinder, but I'm married now. Just kidding, it's been married for a while. But anyway, check us out at Robeytech everywhere. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let us if you know one way or the other down in the comments below. Outside of that, we'll see you on the next one.